Joining us now for more on this emergency situation at Sydney Airport, which thankfully turned out without injury, is Dr. Peter Bates, a former Qantas pilot, now senior consultant at Aviation Consulting. Dr. Bates, what do you make of this incident? What can you tell us about this sort of incident? Your time flying, did you ever have to make a Mayday call yourself?
No, not fortunately. However, it would be a very, very controlled exercise with respect to the crew. The crew are highly competent and they're trained in this at least 4 times a year. So this would have been a standard procedure, although it's a non-standard event. And they would have, if it was an engine failure, or they would have contained the engine, carried out the checklist, then selected a more appropriate altitude for them to fly. And then they would then notify air traffic control. I believe that they used the term Mayday. Mayday is not only one that reflects the criticality within the flight deck, but also it primes the emergency services and air traffic control to deal with the aircraft when it arrives in their particular environment. So it'd be a very controlled exercise. The captain then would have actually advised the cabin crew. The cabin crew would have secured the cabin, and then he would have advised the passengers of the scenario, and would have been a very controlled exercise. I saw the landing on video just a couple of minutes ago, and it was a textbook arrival. So I commend the crew.
I was just going to ask you about that textbook arrival, because at least when I've been on a plane, it feels like you come in a bit faster than that at times. Would there have been a difference in approach from the pilot knowing that one engine was down?
He would have established a stable approach further out than some of the arrivals that they normally do when they, in particular, coming from domestic airports. So he would have been given a nice long approach. He would have actually ensured that the gear and flaps and all the systems were secure and correctly configured. So it would be a very controlled exercise, and the outcome actually proves its point. So these guys practice this 4 times a year, incredibly competent at it, and they're checked to a very high standard. In actual fact, if you debrief these guys, they'll probably say that the aeroplane flew a lot better than what they used to in the simulator. So the simulator is generally harder than the aeroplane. So it was well done. The guys did a great job.
What typically causes engine failure? We've heard it can be a bird flying into the plane, or presumably it can be a maintenance issue. On occasion, it doesn't look like at this time, it can be a fire. What typically causes it?
Well, bear in mind, this aeroplane was in cruise, so I believe it occurred about an hour out. So in cruise, there may have been a system fault or a failure or a mechanical failure within the engine, and it's a complex machine. You've got control systems that control the engine itself, and then you've got the engine itself. So any of those can generate an anomaly, and if there is any anomaly, then the caution is to actually reduce power, and if required, then you shut the engine down and then select an appropriate altitude that the airplane can sustain on one engine, and then carry out very succinct procedures. So it's a very controlled exercise. These engines are incredibly reliable. They're certified for at least 180 minutes, or the airplane's certified to fly 180 minutes on the critical engine, or one engine in this case. So it's a very controlled exercise, and as you can see, it was a very controlled outcome.
Qantas has such an amazing record. What do you attribute that to? And on the other hand, is it a matter of time before you see a plane crash with Qantas? It's happened to everyone else.
No, I don't believe so. I think the ethos within Qantas, is reflected in the majority of airlines around the world. Aviation is one of the safest forms of transport. Qantas's ethos has always been a very high standard in the physiology of the person, the mental competence of the person, and his dexterity in flying the aeroplane. So it goes back to the beginning of Qantas, and that's why they're very safe. A very conservative airline, very conservative crew. If we're not happy, we just don't do it. We just sit and wait. So it's the ethos, and the culture that's instilled. So that's why. And no, I don't believe that that things have changed with respect to that. No, I think we'll continue to see successes of the safest airline in the world, and in fact, safest country in the world. So, I don't consider that.
Well, Dr. Bates, an incident like this, I guess it reminds you of those times you're sitting on the tarmac getting frustrated. They say there's engineering delays, or you might have to change planes. There's good reason for it, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, engineering is just as conservative as the pilots. I mean, the engineer who signs the airplane off, he's liable for that. So, and of course, the investigation, he's asked, why did you certify the airplane to fly? He's not going to put his name to it. So, I mean, the stakes are high, and the passengers actually respect the fact that the stakes are high, and the guys up the front and on the ground are held to account and operate to a very high standard. So,
just on that.
And air traffic control as well. I mean, they're absolutely superb. And ground services. So it really works together very, very well. That's why it's so successful.
Just on that, and finally, is there a check on each engine every single flight? Is that how it works?
Generally, every time the engine shuts down, the engineers will go over there. They'll check the oil. They'll look inside the engine. They'll look in the front of the engine, the back of the engine, to see if there's any anomaly. An engine can have issues in flight that is not necessarily detected by the gauges or instrumentation in the flight deck. So, engineers are very fastidious. They do a walk around the aeroplane, and then the pilot, generally the captain, does the walk around himself before he finally accepts the aeroplane. So, it's a double check everywhere we go. So it's a very controlled and succinct exercise.
Dr. Peter Bates, former Qantas pilot, thanks so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.